Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Inspiration Bible Stories, where we learn about God's love, power, and amazing plans through His Word. Today's story is a very special one called Moses in the Basket. God protects baby Moses. Are you ready to travel back in time to the land of Egypt? Let's begin. Many years had passed since Joseph saved Egypt from a great famine. The people of Israel, God's chosen people, were living in Egypt and had grown into a large nation. But a new Pharaoh, a new king, came to power, one who didn't remember Joseph for all the good he had done. This Pharaoh was cruel and unkind. He looked at the Israelites and became afraid because there were so many of them. So he made them his slaves. He forced them to work day and night, building huge cities and carrying heavy stones under the hot desert sun. It was very hard work. But guess what? Even though Pharaoh was mean, God's people kept growing in number. More and more babies were born, and the Israelites became stronger and stronger. And that made Pharaoh very angry. He didn't want the Israelites to become more powerful than him. One day, Pharaoh made a terrible, cruel command. He announced to everyone, every baby boy born to the Hebrew people must be thrown into the Nile River. Oh no! Can you imagine how scary that must have been for all the mothers and fathers? Their hearts were filled with sadness and fear. But among God's people was a loving mother named Jochebed and her husband Amram. They had just welcomed a beautiful baby boy into their family. When Jochebed looked at her precious son, she saw how special he was. Her heart filled with love, and she knew deep down that God had an amazing plan for him. She held him close, kissed his tiny head, and whispered a prayer, "Lord, please protect my baby. Please keep him safe." For 3 whole months, Jochebed bravely hid her baby. She kept him quiet so that Pharaoh's soldiers wouldn't find him. But as he grew bigger, his little cries became louder. It was getting harder and harder to keep him a secret. Jochebed knew she couldn't hide him in their house any longer. She needed a plan, a brave plan that would require a lot of faith. So she went down to the riverbank and gathered long, tough reeds called papyrus. With her skilled hands, she carefully wove them together, creating a small, sturdy basket, almost like a little boat. To make sure it was waterproof, she covered the outside with tar and pitch so that no water could get inside. She was making a safe, floating bed for her son. Then came the hardest part. She gently kissed her baby one last time. Whispering her love and prayers over him, she carefully placed him inside the basket. Wrapped in his blanket, with a heavy heart, but with great trust in God, she carried the basket to the Nile River and gently set it among the tall reeds near the edge of the water. Can you imagine how Jochebed must have felt, children? She must have been so afraid, but her faith in God was even bigger than her fear. She was trusting God to protect her son. And she wasn't alone in her watchfulness. Hidden nearby, among the tall grass, was the baby's big sister, Miriam. She watched over the little basket, her eyes wide, waiting to see what God would do. Not long after, a very important person came down to the river. It was Pharaoh's own daughter, the princess. She came with her servants to bathe in the cool water of the Nile. As she walked along the river bank, her eyes caught sight of something unusual floating among the reeds. "What is that over there?" she asked one of her servants. "Go and bring it to me." A servant waded into the water and carefully brought the basket back to the princess. When the princess lifted the lid, her eyes grew wide with surprise. Inside was a tiny baby, and he was crying softly. Her heart immediately melted. "Oh, what a precious little baby," she gasped. She knew right away what this meant. This must be one of the Hebrew children. The baby's soft cries touched her heart with compassion. Instead of being angry, she felt a wave of love for him. She smiled and decided in that moment, I will keep him. He will be my own son." Just then, seeing her chance, Miriam bravely ran out from her hiding place. She approached the princess respectfully and asked, "Excuse me, princess. Would you like me to find a Hebrew woman to take care of the baby for you?" The princess, wanting the best for the child, thought this was a wonderful idea. She nodded kindly and said, "Yes, please do. That would be a great help." So Miriam ran as fast as her legs could carry her all the way back home. "Mother, mother," she shouted, bursting with excitement. She told Jochebed everything that had just happened by the river. Can you imagine Jochebed's joy and relief? Her prayer had been answered in the most incredible way. She hurried to the river and bowed before the princess. Pharaoh's daughter looked at her kindly and said, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you for your help." What an amazing miracle! God had not only saved her baby, but he had made a way for Jochebed to raise her own son, and Pharaoh's daughter even paid her to do it. God's plan was so much bigger and more perfect than anything she could have imagined. So Jochebed took her baby home. As the years passed, the little boy grew strong and wise under his mother's loving care. And when he was old enough, Jochebed brought him back to Pharaoh's palace, just as she had promised. The princess officially adopted him as her son. She gave him a special name, Moses. She named him Moses because it means to be drawn out of the water. Children, isn't God's plan amazing? He protected baby Moses from a terrible danger. He cared for his worried mother and his brave sister. And all along, he had a huge plan for Moses' life. God was preparing Moses in the palace of the king so that one day he could lead all of God's people out of slavery in Egypt and into freedom. And just like Moses, God has a special and wonderful plan for you, too. No matter where you are, no matter what happens in your life, even when things seem scary or uncertain, you can be sure that God is watching over you. He is guiding your steps, and he is working everything out for your good because he loves you so much. The story of Moses in the basket reminds us that God is our protector. He is our safe place. Even when we feel afraid, he never, ever leaves us. When Jochebed put her trust in God with the most precious thing in her life, her baby, God did something more wonderful than she could have ever hoped or imagined. So whenever you feel worried or scared, you can remember this story and whisper a little prayer. God, I trust you to protect me just like you protected baby Moses. And always remember God has a beautiful and special plan just for you. Thank you so much for watching Inspiration Bible Stories. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends so more children can learn about God's amazing word. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.